Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. Do you know that thing?
I do. I was just trying to come up with a witty retort as
There's
God,
no.
but nothing was coming.
It's a book. If you didn't know, it's a book that was from the 1970s. I think it was written in 1970 by Judy Blume, which almost everybody, I want to say, in the 70s or 80s read a book that she wrote. She wrote a lot. She was extremely prolific. She just
Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing was my favorite as a young child. Yep.
Yeah. She had several different series as well. This was not a series. This was a book written in 1970 about a little white girl going through puberty and her friends.
Okay.
And she's going through this whole trying to find herself in the whole hormonal puberty thing. And then there's a spirituality part of it that wasn't major. It was just kind of in there, thus the title. Well, Judy Blume this week came out and said that they're going to make a movie.
Okay.
Based on the book. And I had the reason.
Is there going to be a scene where they all try to make their boobs bigger?
Well, there is. I must increase my bust. There is that. I don't know. Here's what I want to say. All my friends that are about my age who grew up reading this were so excited on Facebook. Couldn't wait. They're like, yay, it's about time. Well, it's, 40 years. Okay. Is it about time? I'm not sure it is. I will tell you why I didn't go yay and cheer this on. It's 2018. It's the 21st century. And this demographic is, I feel it's very, very small. It's white girls between the ages of 10 and 14 in 1972. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know how they would have to update it. And here's the deal. So you're my age and you go see this movie and they've updated it. You're going to be all hurt because it's not going to be the book that you read back in the 70s. Here's my deal. Bottom line, I think it's too late. It's too late.
Attention, attention. Pop surgeons Eric and Stacey, please report to operating room 1. Pop surgeons Eric and Stacey, please report to operating room 1. Surgery is about to begin.
Hello, this is Poperation. I'm Stacey.
I'm Eric. I'm calling in this week.
That's okay. I miss your presence, but you're hearing my head over my headphones.
There you go. And we wanted to put on a show. So
it's true. So
we're going to talk over each other a lot.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be the best episode ever. So, you know what we're talking about? We're talking about, it's actually, you know what? It's actually in the theaters right now. You can literally, after you finish listening, you can go out and use your movie pass. But you can go see this movie in the theater. That's how current we are. It's only been out for a couple of weeks. It's A Star is Born, starring Lady Gaga, is what the movie is that's currently out now. But we're actually going to talk about more than that.
Because this movie has now been made 4 times.
And I think
sometimes 5. Sometimes people say 5. I didn't see the one that came before 1937 with a different title, but basically is the same movie.
Oh, okay. I did not see that as either. I've seen them all. We both seen them all. And so we wanted to kind of talk about them because I think it's important to talk about them all. Having seen this last one, I think it's important because clearly there's a reason it keeps getting remade.
And I don't know what that reason is.
Yeah, I don't either.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, maybe we'll figure it out as we talk among them. But when I first saw the preview of this, I was excited because I love Bradley Cooper because he's hot.
Basically, these 4 movies have the same plot.
Yes, and it starts off that she is a struggling, young artist with a dream. And he is a well-established star with a drinking problem, is typically how we begin. They will meet in a way that does not really conform to the rules of reality as we know them, but nonetheless, they meet each other.
They're all kind of meet cutes, as they say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all over the place. So
and
we'll talk
contrived
about
like a motherfucker.
every
This
single one of them.
contrived.
Yes, I mean this is not anything that would exist in reality. She gets way too close to him, especially as these go on. The more current you get with these, like they're way too close to these super famous people. You know, as a non-famous person, famous people live in a bubble, and you just don't pierce it that easily. But,
yes.
But he discovers how talented she is somehow, and decides that she deserves to be a star. So introduces her to all the right people, makes the connections, and eventually she becomes, you know, a star in her own right. Usually about halfway through the movie, and in every version, they get married.
Yes. Yes.
Right? There's some
Isn't
wedding,
that interesting?
And usually she looks awful. But it's true. It's true. Usually she looks terrible. Does not look like, you know, like you want to look on your wedding day. And right after they get married, his career begins to fall apart. And that looks a little different depending on, because by the way, none of these are period pieces, right? I mean, they're all,
they were all,
you know, from
current.
1937, 1954, 1976, and now 2018. And they all take place kind of very current day.
Exactly. So in theory, you're looking at whatever life was like at the time the movie was made.
Yeah. And whatever his career is, because sometimes he's a movie star and sometimes he's a rock star, his career starts to fall apart in some way. And we kind of see that happen. But her career is just going gangbusters.
Well, and it's usually that whole where his is going down, hers is going up, and they're meeting right there at that moment before his goes really down and hers goes really up.
But in every version, she stands by her man.
She does.
Yes, she does. She does not step 1 foot away from this, you know, person who, now, again, addiction is a disease. So not to cast any, I totally get that. But
and understand that it was only really acknowledged in the last 2, but really more in the last 1.
Yeah.
The first 2, you know, he was drunk.
It's a character flaw.
Yeah. It was a character flaw. Yeah. It wasn't a big deal, though. It's because, you know, he drinks a little much.
Yeah. And yet only in one of them, which we'll talk about, do I really get the fact that she ever gets angry at him. You know, the other 3, these women are pretty saintly in their devotion towards this man who would probably be pretty hard to love at times. Well, he has a disease, but tough to live with.
I will tell you, here's my feeling, because I think some of these, and we're going to hit some of them separate. We're going to hit, you know, the separate ones and talk about them a little bit. But I will say that there are some things that you can say that go across the board. And one of the things, in my opinion, was I didn't find him very likable. Now, he was, depending on the movie, Norman Maine, or I forget what was his name in the 76 one.
John Norman
Howard, right? And then in he's Jackson Maine in the latest one. Yep. But he's varying degrees of doucheness, but I didn't this is supposed to be a love story.
Yep.
And I think the first one, that's what it's this love story, and you know, and when careers collide, and what do you do when the man's career is eclipsed by his wife? And you know, I was frustrated in all 4 of them for some of the very same reasons.
Well,
and part of it is because of this damn plot.
I understood and I appreciated the fact that in all 4 of them, he has a drinking problem from the very beginning.
Yes.
Like, that's not something that they just shoehorn in towards the middle of the movie so they can have it. It's there.
Yeah.
But what makes that hard in all 4 of these movies is you're just like, red flags, honey, red flags. Like, run away. Especially, I have to say, number 3. Yeah. I have no idea. Barbara is an idiot to stay with this man because he was, you know, oh my God, like, what? What are you doing? I get he's famous, but without, if it's just about her career ambition, then fine. Then I don't like her much either.
Yeah.
But, you know,
No,
you
I
have to
didn't-
believe that she loves this guy. And in so many of these red flags are just in your face.
And in the second one, see, James Mason, whom I love, James Mason. Okay. I always like watching him. I think he's just, I just love him as an actor and that sort of thing. But his, to me, was the most unlikable character. I never understood why. I did not get that relationship at all. And certainly why she stayed with him. And then, but here's the thing. So, and here's a spoiler, and sorry, but you know, if you're going to the show and you're like, but I don't want to know. Yeah, sorry. At the end of 3 of the 4, it's all about him. When the name of the movie is A Star Is Born, but it really, in my opinion, should be titled A Star Dies. Because it's about the man, and every single movie was promoted. It was Janet Gaynor, it was Judy Garland vehicle, it was a Barbara Streisand vehicle. This is a Lady Gaga vehicle. I'm sorry, no, it's not. Although I did notice on all 4 of the posters when I looked them up, all the first 3 all give the woman top billing. This one, Lady Gaga had top billing in the closing credits, but the poster says Bradley Cooper, and under that, Lady Gaga. He's the bigger star right now. He's the bigger star.
Well, he's the bigger movie star. He is not the bigger star.
You're exactly right, but this is a movie. He's a bigger star, and also he's a director. But and
she did get the first credit when the credits rolled at the end. I did notice that.
But to me, I think that is that's a nothing, because this plot to me is all about, let's watch his ego. Let's make sure he's okay. And, you know, and then at the end, except for Barbara, everybody gives him credit. Like he was this most magnificent, wonderful. No, he was a drunk. And maybe at one point he did some good art, but by the time you met him, honey, he was a drunk and he was on his way out. Again, I couldn't buy into that for any of them. And at the end, for the first 2, the last line is, "I am Mrs. Norman Maine," and it's like, what the hell? Why are we giving him credit for all the work you did? Again, that's my 21st century idea coming in, but still.
And the idea of being Mrs. and then a man's name is just so. I mean, I'm glad they stopped doing that after 1954.
Yeah, but why did Gaga? Why is her name? Her name? She changed her name. At the end, she says, "I'm whatever Maine."
Yeah.
And Allie Maine, and I'm like, are you effing kidding me?
Well, it's interesting that she didn't have a last name for the whole movie.
She really didn't. No,
she never did. I mean, I've read some reviews that say, you know, her name was Allie.
Yeah.
And as a pop star, her name was Allie. Yeah. Like Madonna. You know, it was a one name kind of, you know. She must have had, we meet her father. It's the only time we
never know his name.
A father figure. But you never knew his name. Yeah. You knew his first name.
Yeah.
But yeah, they kind of kept the last name out until the very end. She announces herself as Allie Maine. By the way, we skipped a pretty important plot point, although you alluded to it in your alternative title. Something that happens in all 4 of these is he dies. And in fact, he kills himself.
Yes.
And
he dies by his own hand. Yeah.
Sometimes mysteriously, but always, I mean, he always killed himself, but sometimes he did it in a way that just seemed like, really, it's only the last one that the movie makes, it's.
Well, I'll be honest.
I mean, he kills himself in all 4 of them. Let me be clear.
Does.
But in the other 3, it looks like it could be. I'm always thinking of this like as a movie star. If you were a fan of his, Chris Christopherson maybe just drove his car a little bit too fast and then just had an accident. It might have looked that way to a fan.
Here's my thing about it is that this was very much, and even this version, it's a melodrama. And so part of a melodrama is there's got to be some non-realisticness. And I think that the fastness, the ease with which everybody falls like into major love, and that was another thing. All of these women fall so desperately in love, and we're supposed to believe also that the men are desperately in love with them. as well. I rarely believed that, quite frankly. I guess I believed it with the last one, but the other three, not as much. But here's the thing. The first two killed themselves by walking to the ocean. And I get that that's dramatic, and they used to use that kind of suicide a lot. That's hard to do. That's hard to kill.
Your body
that's
kind
a
of takes
hard
over.
way to kill yourself.
Yeah.
So that's one of those where it looks all dramatic as they walk toward the beach and into the water as the sun sets. And then, we cut away next day. But it's not. So it's one of those where, again, 2018, watching 1937 going, really? Dude, that took longer. That was harder than you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you do like a Nicole Kidman in The Hours and you put rocks in your swimming trunks. That
you have to do more. You have to do more
to make yourself drown. It is a very difficult and painful, by the way, way to die.
Horrible.
But he kills himself sometimes in a way that is very literal and sometimes in a way that is very, I'll walk into the ocean as the sun sets. And then the last moment of the piece is always kind of an I will survive kind of moment. And you're right. In the first two, she steps out in public for the first time since the tragedy, announces herself as Mrs. Norman Maine to show the world that she still loves this deeply flawed man. And, isn't she wonderful? And it goes down. The last two, which were about rock music, she gets a big song to sing through her tears, after this man has died. And if you didn't want to know that, well, tough. This was made in 1937,
this
people.
Is the fourth,
you had time to catch
you had
up.
time to catch up.
So, if you were a super Gaga fan, you should have gone out and watched the first three as soon as it was announced, like we did, and we'd be good to go. Yeah. So a few trademarks of this thing that happen in all three. And
let me just say this, for all my cynicism, I do appreciate that there were things that were kept in every single one. I appreciate the tradition. So
I do too. So one of them that shows up in all four movies is this whole, and it's in the trailer of the new one, is I just wanted to have another look at you.
I was so happy they kept that. I was so happy because that is actually one of the best moments in each movie.
Because that's when you kind of know he's into her.
Correct. And it's also
they kept that tradition alive.
It seems to be a little bit more real than some of the other BS that they say. So I like the fact that was kept in every single version, and because to me it was the most real.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that happens in all four, although it happens differently in the last one, is that he really embarrasses her as she's winning her first big award of her career. And we'll get into what that looks like, but there's always this thing at an award show. And then, as we already alluded to, the last moment of her announcing herself as Mrs. something with his name in it, either Mrs. Norman Maine or just announcing herself with his last name. Yeah. To let the world know that I am his wife and I am
and he was worth something. He was not just a drunk. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one I could have done without, but the others, I think for this plot, you kind of need that. That's
they're hallmarks, and it kind of it makes it makes it a real remake as opposed to just let's slap this name on yet another movie. And in fact, I think in 2018, we didn't need to see another Star is Born, quite frankly. But if you're going to do it, then you should harken back to some of these traditions that are, especially if they're in all three. Now, the one that is different, I wrote this down as a trademark before I saw the Gaga version. I wrote down, studio bosses and record company executives seem to be awfully friendly people in these movies. That is not true in the last one. And I was actually appreciative of that change because I think we're a little bit more cynical now.
Yes.
And we know that the people who run the entertainment business are not saintly father figures who have the best interests of their stars truly at heart.
I think, and we'll get to the last one, but I want to say, before that, I think it is worth noting that the first three are in the 20th century. And the last one is in the 21st century. And a crap ton has happened in society and the world since the third and the fourth one happened. And so I think that that's important with regard to some of the choices that Bradley Cooper made in directing this, and also that the writers did in writing it. So just throwing that out there. But at the same time, as you said, they kept some of these traditions. Now, I don't know about whatever, silent movie or whatever happened before 1937. But I had forgotten. I've seen some stuff with Janet Gaynor because I'm an old film buff.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that anybody knows her name. She is not a name that endured as far as, people remember Ginger Rogers, Katharine Hepburn. Those are some names that they know, Lucille Ball. But Janet Gaynor, people don't know. She's just charming as hell.
Oh, she is.
I just thought she's just charming as hell. Big-eyed. She worked with this perfectly. Here's a fun thing about this first one is that they gave, there was a little bit more time in her backstory.
Yeah, she actually had, you found out kind of where she came from.
She was somewhere in the Midwest, North Dakota or something.
North Dakota,
one of those square states.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
up there with a lot of snow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, this was her big dream and sitting and looking at it in 2018, I'm like, oh, honey, you're so naive. You're so naive.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to go and be a big star. And of course, the joke is that's actually what happened. It is not a musical. The first one is not a musical at all. It's
just a straight up story about two non-singing actors in Hollywood. By the way, I just looked this up. A lot of people say that this film was based on a movie called What Price Hollywood? ?
Okay.
Released in 1932 by RKO. So anyway, that one, when A Star Is Born in 1937, 5 years later came out, people were like, oh, it's basically the same movie.
Okay.
But, anyway, so there you go. But this was the first one in 1937. Right. That was called A Star Is Born, and Frederick March played the drunken movie star.
Now, there's another name who was huge, and both Janet Gaynor and Frederick March were huge in the 30s and the early 40s. After that, not as much, but they were huge names. So understand that even though we've never heard, people mostly around haven't heard of them, they are around, and you can find, especially Frederick March. There's a lot more. I think he did a lot more than she did. But
Frederick March to me was always best known as the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Right, I forgot he did that too.
That's where I always remember him, because I always put him in the same category as Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, as these kind of movie monster icons.
That's interesting because I put him in the same pot as Charles Boyer.
Oh, okay.
Those kind.
That's a very different pot.
I know it is a different pot but that's where I put him, but because I wasn't. I forget about Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and I see him as he's usually the elegant guy who comes in and whatnot. But anyway, I think it's a charming, it's a 1937 melodrama, man. I mean, you go.
And it clocks in at about an hour and a half, which compared to the rest of these, if you just, seriously, I mean, A Star Is Born is kind of synonymous anymore with it's an epic movie.
Yes,
and this is not an epic movie. It's just a little story about two people.
Yes, I agree. It's a little melodrama. They're all melodramas because I really think that's important to put it in there because it's that bittersweet love story, and they go all out. There's a lot of crying. There's a lot of anger. I mean, emotion. You talk about emo, all up and down is, hashtag emo.
Yep.
And so to me, that is what denotes a melodrama. And that's what it is. But that's what in the 1937, it's just a small little melodrama movie with these two good actors. Well, a lot of good actors, actually. A lot of good.
Yeah.
Adolphe Menjou, loved him.
Yeah, he's great.
And it is what it is. It was a Saturday morning, or Saturday evening night at the movies, man. You go and you see these guys on the big screen doing this thing and you cry a little bit and you walk out. And I'll be honest with you, that would have been fine if that was the last we heard.
One thing though, so a couple of things. I just want to say, there was, first of all, one of the screenwriters of this original, which I was kind of surprised when I popped it in, it was Dorothy Parker. Was one of the people who wrote this thing. There are 4 people credited with writing this movie, and Dorothy Parker was one of them.
Well, yeah, she did a lot of that. She did a lot of that. F. Scott Fitzgerald did some stuff. I mean, there were people that were doing screenplays that you would be shocked to know that that's what they did.
Yeah, well, the movie industry was so young, especially writing for the movies, because it wasn't that long before they were all silent.
Yeah,
and so people with a way with words, it was this brand new industry, and there was no it wasn't seen as a step down from anything. I mean, it was just this new thing.
No,
that, like,
exactly.
Why don't we try and play with this? Now, if you're a serious playwright or a serious novelist, you wouldn't dare write for Hollywood. I think we're getting over that a little bit, because now we've got really good writers writing for television. But
exactly.
But it wasn't a bad thing. The other thing I will say about this one, because it's not a musical, and because Esther in this version, Esther Blodgett is the name of the character for the first two, which is just a name that's begging to be changed,
Correct.
which they do. So part of the whole thing is that Esther Blodgett becomes Vicky Lester. And in the first two, they make, it's kind of a big deal that this name change is necessary because you can't make a star out of Esther Blodgett. But because she doesn't have any big musical numbers, there's this thing about like, well, how do we know she's any good? And so they put in this scene where she's waiting tables to a bunch of Hollywood, big time like agents and directors and folks. And she walks around, and Janet Gaynor is hilarious. She does an impersonation of every big movie star of the day.
Oh, she nailed it.
Handling it. Oh my God.
She nailed it.
Who are they all? She does a Greta Garbo.
She does Greta Garbo. She does Katharine Hepburn. And I think there's some.
Mae West?
I don't know.
It was hey, big boy. There was one of those, like, I thought it was Mae West.
It may have been. I don't remember. I remember Katharine Hepburn. I remember Greta Garbo. It was adorable. It was an adorable moment.
Great. I mean, it's very funny. And, the other ones, all have like a really big song towards the beginning that lets you know, wow, this woman's got pipes, she's got passion, she's got this, and it's all very dramatic. In this one, they did something just to show that she could compete with any one of these big stars, but it was hilarious because little Janet Gaynor, who's just cute, is doing all of these very sultry movie star-esque kinds of, and I just wanted to mention that scene because there's nothing like it in any of the others.
Correct, but I think also the deal is that this movie, the first one, again, because it's not a musical, because you don't have powerhouse voices that are singing these big epic songs, it's more about the story, the love story between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So the acting and all of that is just kind of it's like, this is where they are. This is what their jobs are, as opposed to that's what it's about, that industry. I mean, they have allusions to the industry where you kind of feel like maybe you're, when they're changing her face and made her look like Joan Crawford.
Yeah.
Because again, they had to change her name. And they had to change her hair and they had to change her face. I mean, that's just the idea that you go into Hollywood and you're made a star, but they completely change you from whatever you were. And they did that more in the first two than they did in the latter ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although the fourth one, they did a lot.
Yeah.
But that was, it was.
But you really get the sense that this entertainment industry is a machine.
Yes, most definitely.
And I will say that in this first one, there was a little bit more sense of hopelessness in terms of your dream to be a big, huge star is just like, honey, you get in line.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And they did not make it look easy. In fact, one of the things that I kind of didn't like about the first version, it seemed to have a point of view that if she'd never met this man, she never would have been a star. And she never would have made it on her own.
No, because
Whereas the other three, I think you're meant to believe that she was so incredibly talented. And I mean, it's these singers. It's Judy. It's Barbara. It's Gaga. Eventually, they would have. I mean,
and they were all working.
Aided their careers.
Understand,
and they were all working. They were all moving towards that.
When they met their husband to be, the last three, they were all working in the industry they wanted to be in.
Yep.
When Janet Gaynor met Frederick March, when she met Norman Maine, she was a waitress.
Yes, who had moved to Hollywood from North Dakota specifically to be an actress.
Right. And
but
she's
you're right.
She was running out of money. Yeah. And so she had to be a waitress. And so it's...
Although to be fair, it's easier to find a microphone to sing into somewhere than it is to, if you're going to be a film actress, but yeah, I mean, they could have said she took a little job in theater and he came to see her do a bit part and it was in trance.
They did not do that. But again, I think that's one, because the first one was more about, it was supposed to be, this is a story about, it's a bittersweet love story about these two people who loved each other so much, but because of his issues, they could never, it was not going to end well.
Yep.
That's, So that is 1937, and again, it's adorable, but it's almost 100 years old. Alrighty then.
Welcome to 1954.
Oh, wow. Wow. It's a little different. It's a little different from
Things are
1937.
bigger, the lights are brighter, and the films are twice as long.
You also, the big thing was musicals. Big, huge musical shows and color, Technicolor, and just big.
Although the first one was in color.
It was.
We didn't mention this before. It was in 1937, but it was in Technicolor.
It is, but I will tell you right now, when I remember it, it feels like it was in black and white.
Doesn't it? I have the same thing.
I'm sitting here going, was it in color? But it was. You're right. It was.
It was a Technicolor film in 1937, which is weird. It was a new thing.
It was very new.
And it was weird because they were making black and white movies well into the 50s. But this was one of the first color ones. Anyway, 54 feels more colorful.
It was, oh my God. Well, it was very, I mean, the costume on this, I don't know if they won any awards, but they probably could have. It was very bright and brassy. Yep. It was very much like, frankly, Judy Garland herself.
Yeah. But so
again,
Judy Garland was the star of this one. She was Esther Blodgett / Vicky Lester, same names. Mm-hmm. James Mason had the same name as the guy before. He was Norman Maine. Mm-hmm. And another, now
in this one, she's a singer. He is not. He is an actor.
Yes, so she gets all the big numbers.
Yes, exactly. You don't really want James Mason singing. There is a moment.
I am actually good with that. I'm good with the idea that in A Star Is Born, that
doesn't
she
mean
gets
it's a movie star. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, but she gets all those big numbers because it really is about this amazing talent that she is. Now, one of the things I liked about this movie is at the end, after he died, there's a scene between the, again, very friendly father figure-esque movie mogul studio owner and the publicity guy who hated Norman Maine.
Yes.
And the guy says, I wish you would have known Norman Maine. And the guy says, I worked with him for 20 years. I knew him. He was a pain in the ass. And he's like, no, you never knew him. He was long gone by the time you ever met him. And I appreciated that moment because you're right. As soon as we saw Norman Maine, he wasn't very likable.
He wasn't.
But that was an interesting moment that I think had some truth to speak about addiction, even in the 50s before we really knew a whole lot.
Right. And I did appreciate that line, but I remember at the time going, yeah, for me, in order for me as an audience member to fall in love with him and believe that Vicky fell in love with him herself, I needed to see some of that, not have it told to me after the guy's already offed himself. I mean, it was a little too late there, Bubba. But
there was a moment at the beginning of this version where he is so they meet at this big benefit concert and he shows up drunk off his ass. Almost ruins her big numbers. So it's a big moment for her in her career because she's singing to all of these Hollywood types, right? So she might have some feelings about that. And after it's all over, he grabs her brand new lipstick and does this big EB loves NM on the theater back wall, acts like a complete asshole, and walks away. And she goes, he's awfully nice. And I was like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah. I had a very difficult time with this particular version. And that was one reason is I never liked him. And I love James Mason. So I was already, in the frame of mind that I'm going to love it because I love James. He was douchey McDoucherson. I did not like him at all. But having said that, understand also that this movie was created because Judy Garland needed to have a little bit of a comeback. She was looking to revive her career a little bit. And that's why it's like a little bit of plot in between all her songs.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting to me that, Janet Gaynor was an Academy Award winner before she made this movie. And the Academy Awards were a very new thing. So she was like one of the reigning queens of Hollywood. Judy Garland was already Judy Garland, before this movie was ever made. Meet Me in St. Louis was, probably her biggest hit before this. And that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So she'd been a big star for a very long time. it's interesting to me that these movies kind of keep doing that. I'm like, wouldn't it be great to truly cast an unknown in A Star Is Born? Wouldn't that be interesting? We never do.
Basically, what happened since Judy Garland is it got bigger and bigger. Sometimes not for the best, but that is kind of the way it went. But part of it was because that's what she needed in her career. So that's how come the movie became that.
Yeah. So as we've said, 3 hours long, mostly due to these big, expansive musical numbers that don't do jack shit to advance the plot at all, which is kind of one of the cardinal rules of musical theater, which a lot of musical theater has turned into a movie musical, is that the best musicals, like the songs actually aid in telling the story. The characters are a little different at the end of the song than they were at the beginning.
Yeah, a lot of times a song is telling you what the person's thinking. And thus you're getting inside their head. And as you said, thus it moves the plot along.
But even as they express their thoughts, it becomes clearer to them just how much they love so-and-so or whatever. And then they have a resolve or something. This one is just, these songs are just, the movie stops. We have a really long song. And
it totally.
Now the one that is a little different from that is the very first big number is The Man That Got Away. And the way that this does advance the plot is that this is when James Mason realizes just how good she is. Although, you know what? A lot of actors didn't want this role because it was a washed up actor who was losing his career. And a lot of actors didn't want to do it. I think I liked James Mason in this probably more than you did.
I mean, it's not a likable character. I don't know that it's about.
Red flags.
I don't think it's James's. I don't think it's James Mason's fault, though. That's my thing. Is I don't think it's his.
I think
fault.
a lot of it was writing, and a lot of it was. But I did see how he was charming, and I could see how she was charmed by him. The next big musical number was called "Born in a Trunk." Oh my God, was it long? It just went on and on and on and on. And this was supposed to be the scene in the movie that, that the world discovered what a big star she was. It was great. Could have been a ton shorter.
Well, shorter. Yeah. And I guess they were big. These were big numbers. I get that. But that's just like that's what it was. It was a concert with a little bit of plot inside.
Yeah.
She had all the songs she did were these big epic numbers. The damn show had an intermission, for God's sake.
Yeah,
it had an intermission, and I guess people came back. It's like it was crazy.
Yeah, the one scene I do want to mention in this one, because I think it was just a real standout that I did not see any trace of, a little trace of in the original. But I think this movie did it better than any of them, quite frankly. Is a scene towards the end where she's in her dressing room. The kindly father figure movie studio mogul comes to visit her. But whatever. And she asks everyone to leave, and she has this moment with him. And the two lines that really kind of stick with me from this is she says, at one point she goes, "Love isn't enough. Love is not enough." And it seemed like that was a really smart thing to say about addiction in 1954. I wasn't alive in 1954, but that to me was like, she's hitting on something. And then the other one is when she said, "Sometimes I just hate him."
Yes. Well, it is a very nice scene. And I will say, this is the age, still in the 50s, you were having people that would go, "I'm going to have one more for the road." That was still what society was doing. It was still okay to be drinking however much, and then drinking and driving, drinking and whatever, it was still not considered. So the idea that she is sitting there and having the honest thought, I agree with you wholeheartedly, that actually was maybe the most real part of that particular version.
Yeah, I agree. Now let's move on to 1976.
Do we have to? Can we just skip into the 21st century right now? Just right here, now.
And the classic film A Perm Is Born.
Oh my Jesus Christ!
Starring Barbra Streisand.
This is true. Hashtag true. They had to get bigger cameras because her hair wouldn't fit.
I don't believe you.
Come on.
That's funny though. So this time Barbara plays Esther Hoffman, who doesn't change her name. She's just Esther
She's just
Hoffman
Esther
the whole time.
And it's Esther, but remember, she's at one point, she's standing there and it's just the big letters Esther.
Esther.
So that kind of starts the way toward. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was weird.
And then Chris Christopherson as John Norman Howard. When we meet Esther, she's in a darling little outfit called the Oreos. The Oreos consist of two black women with Barbra Streisand singing in the middle. Them.
She's sitting in the middle. It's awful.
And they call
now, first of all, here's what I will say. They sound
Oreos.
Good, but it was awful and it was cringy and I was really uncomfortable.
Cringy as fuck. It was, Barbara, what the fuck?
But,
like, oh my God. So, I just couldn't.
But I also want to say, just overall on this particular version, it felt grungy. They were trying to be that 70s, the 70s, everything got real. And they were trying to be real. And it was just, I was like, I wanted to take a shower a lot. I was like, everybody needs to wash their hair. And, it's like, put down the drugs and go.
But also in terms of just the way that, quote unquote, everything got real, I felt like half these scenes weren't even written down. They just were kind of,
oh my God, it did meander. Like, it meandered.
Improv and meandered and just kind of went all over the, because it's, it's this kind of new kind of filmmaking, man. Oh my God.
You know who the producer was?
Tell me.
John Peters.
Oh, right.
Who was her beau at the time.
Yes.
And of course, he came from Shampoo. That was his first big thing that she helped produce with him.
The movie, not the business.
The movie. Yeah, sorry, the movie. And because he was a hairdresser back in the day. But anyway, that's important to note that John Peters was producer of the 1976 version.
Yeah.
Because he's also one of the producers of the 2018 version.
I know. That was so odd.
That was stunning. But anyway, okay, keep in mind. So there's John Peters, who's this cooler than cool guy in 1976. You've got Barbara, who is, this is a time where she needs to, and she reinvented herself about 4 times, did Barbara.
Yep.
And she did it wonderfully. This was during one of these times where she was, the Main Event was another movie she did with the big hair. That's how I know when these things happen, is because of her hair. And her hair was out there. But the 70s, I'll be honest, it was not a pretty fashion time. And so that was something that I had to deal with this whole drama.
No, I'm sure in 1976, actually, her wedding dress was probably considered pretty.
Okay.
It was just very 70s.
Oh, my God.
So it was just...
Okay, what I enjoyed, here's my favorite part, a young, not insane Gary Busey.
Right.
He was not insane yet, and he was actually good.
Yeah, no, he's a
it was actually fun to watch him. He played the assistant to Maine, whatever. Chris Christopherson scares her.
Yeah,
Chris Christopherson, I like him, and I remembered when I saw it a long time ago. I don't know that I saw it in 76, but I saw it probably in the 80s or something. Mm-hmm. I don't remember. I remember kind of not liking Chris or whatever and saying, oh, he's not as good, blah, blah, blah. And then I saw him in other things and I thought, he's not that bad an actor. Watching it this time, he's not that bad an actor.
I couldn't buy him as a rock star is the problem. The way that Chris Christopherson was playing a rock star, Neil Diamond's just a different genre.
Again, they grunged it down. So it was weird because you're like, wait, and I had this problem with the 2018 as well. Here's his music and then her music. And they're not the same.
No.
So I didn't understand the connection. I also had a problem. Feminism was starting in the 70s. And I was just like, this is like ignoring that. It was also ignoring the whole, when you talk about the Oreos, the name, the first thing, it's ignoring the civil rights and stuff that's going on. I'm like,
although the movie made it seem like these two black girls were like her best friends who, whenever they'd pop up, they'd be best friends, but then they'd be gone for so long.
Yeah, they didn't. They never. Yeah, I didn't. But I mean,
you kind of, it's one of those things. Like, apparently they were in on the joke, but whatever. It was still a really bad joke.
So I wrote a note, and let me tell you what my note was while I'm watching it. This is my note. 3 words. So much stupid. That's how I felt about this movie. So much stupid. To me, this movie had only one thing that came out of it good, and that was the song, Evergreen.
Yeah,
That's
one
it.
song.
The one
because
song.
the rest
Only
of them
song.
were
Yep.
completely forgettable.
Oh,
I can't even. It's been a while since I can't even remember a single
have
one.
no idea because they were awful. His was awful, and he sang it like 4 times. He had one song that he sang over and over again, and I thought, I can't handle it. I can't. I just can't. Evergreen was. It's beautiful, and it was a huge hit, and it deserved to be. I think it's a lovely song, but they were also not. They didn't move the plot along, but they also weren't any, as you said, they weren't memorable. They weren't good, and they were all over the map. And when you look at the credits, no single song had the same writers. So which
is a problem because they're all supposed to be written by this singular voice,
right? Which is why they didn't go together anywhere, because you had them coming from all over the place. So, as I said, that was the thing that came out of it. It was a mistake, and done. I'm out. So that's 1976, and Lee said, "Soonest mended." I don't even know what that means. I'm just like, hey, get the fuck away from that one. So Lady Gaga is in A Star Is Born.
Yes, she sure is.
So, you know what? It was not the worst, A Star Is Born. No. I could actually do, honestly, and I'm completely sincere, I could probably talk for a good 30 minutes about and analyze the hell out of the directing.
I thought Bradley Cooper did a really good job.
I thought he did a very nice job. I think he did a very nice job. And then I'm going to say, I think he did an excellent job for it being his first big movie.
And directing a woman who's really in her first big feature film.
I agree. No, I think he did
she did a lovely job too.
I think she did a great job. I really, truly do. I also think that Andrew Dice Clay, yeah, you're right, who plays her dad, which was all of that was a little discombobulating. I thought he did a really good job.
Yeah,
I didn't hate anybody. I loved, I
really like Sam Elliott.
Well, I was going to get to him. I loved, I wanted to say that I liked Shangela and Willem, drag queens that I followed. I thought they did a great job. I believe, it was lovely. Of the two, I think Shangela, she's really good.
Yes.
Really believable. Okay. I will watch.
Dave Chappelle.
Dave was wonderful. I really liked him. But here's the thing. That was my expectation. I expected him to be that good. And I also expected this, but it just reaffirmed that I will watch or listen to Sam Elliott do anything he wants to do.
Yep.
Here's the thing. I'm over the plot. I'm over the plot of A Star Is Born. It's not my favorite plot. It never was. And so I go and I see this and I'm like, yeah, got it. Yeah, that happened.
So you know what? I read this thing online, and if I can find it, I'll put it up on the Facebook page when this podcast gets put out. And it was these two women, and it was a conversation between two women, one of whom really liked this movie and the other one really didn't. And the one who didn't basically said, I don't ever need to see another Star Is Born unless they did something really interesting like swap the genders. And I thought, ooh.
Yes, I agree with her.
That would actually be kind of
I would
cool.
agree with her. I don't know that I will see another one when in 20 years when they make a new one, unless they've switched the genders or done something interesting, I won't see it again because I have seen this damn plot. I got it. And I still was frustrated because even at the damn end in 2018, she's like, my name is Allie Main. Shut up. No, it's not. It's not. I mean, are you fucking kidding me? Why didn't she just come out and say, I am Mrs. Norman Main? Because that's exactly what it was. That was frustrating.
Again, the movie starts off with this one genre of music. You kind of get into it. And as Gaga herself showed in her last album, it got more rock and roll and a lot less disco, techno, pop stuff. Now, Gaga has done techno, disco, pop intelligently for a while. And that was always her calling card to me, is that she does this dance pop music, but she's got a point of view, and she's got, the lyrics are actually clever, and some of them, kind of say something. And, Born This Way was a big anthem for the queer community and all this kind of stuff. Like, she's got something to say in addition to just wearing funky clothes and doing, funky dance moves. But this movie really, I felt like it didn't like her artistic direction, and we were supposed to kind of look down on her for it. That last number that she comes out, her big I Will Survive moment, she's still dressed like a glitzy pop star, but you notice her hair is no longer orange. She's gone back to the brown hair.
Yeah, I saw that.
She looks more like herself, and it's a song that he wrote.
Yeah. Which
again, just completely downplays the idea that when she was going off being, so I was just like, okay, I didn't like the idea that in this fourth version of A Star Is Born, that we're supposed to believe that her work is not nearly as good as it could be. Like, I really like the idea that in all of these others, especially when you saw Judy Garland, that whole long ass Born as a Trunk medley was long as hell, but at least it was Judy Garland like at her peak, doing amazing work, and you're supposed to be fabulously entertained by it.
What the deal was, they all reached their potential. And you don't feel like Gaga, you feel like she's less than where he thought she could be, and where you're as you said, you were steered to think she could be. I think there were some writing issues with this.
The one thing I liked, though, about this movie that I thought was a marked improvement was we finally got to see assholes in the entertainment industry, just because I think that's real.
Sure.
I thought the fact that, in this one, her manager, like you said, we've already had a scene where he yells at her for going out there without her dancers because she wants to have a moment with her audience. And she gets on stage and she's like, it was so great. It was so much fun. And he's like, don't you ever do that again. I'm like, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
And, she probably shouldn't have changed the thing that they had rehearsed.
But she didn't fire him. She didn't fire him.
No, she didn't.
Okay.
But she couldn't, because she was a nobody then, and he was still in the process of discovering her and making her big.
She never
did. But he also got her a Grammy and got her on Saturday Night Live.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just telling you.
Then at the end, and that's another reason why I think we're not supposed to like the direction her career is taking, because you see that she's being kind of manipulated, or at least guided, by this asshole that we don't like.
But at the end,
that's the other piece.
Again, as you said,
at the end,
she's still dressed like that.
Yeah. She's dressed in, actually, no, I disagree. I think in that last moment, when we see her sing that last song, she's wearing, like a very fancy kind of ball gown kind of a thing, but it's almost this Cinderella look. It's not the kind of cheap, tacky.
No, it's not
pop star
that.
Shit
and she has an orchestra and all of that, but it is this big, it's a Judy Garland kind of showstoppy kind of thing. That was not what he did and not what she did in the beginning of the movie. It was a different kind of music. And so I didn't know how I was supposed to feel about the kind of music she was doing. Yeah. Definitely get rid of that red in your hair, for sure. That was awful.
It was awful.
And it was so annoying as it lasted so long, in my opinion. But anyway, actually, I guess I had an issue. Again, this is another hard way to die. Hanging yourself with a belt. It's another hard way to die. Now, they foreshadowed it because apparently when he was younger, he'd tried it before. And so you're kind of like, oh, I got it now. I will give Bradley props for having the moment where the dog is just sitting outside of the garage where he's hanging himself.
Oh my God.
So you're not seeing that, and you're just seeing the little dog just sitting there and having no idea what's going on. But everybody in the audience is like, oh my God. So that was a nice little moment. We didn't have any graphic sex, but we did know that they had sex. I thought he handled some of those scenes well. Again, I could go down the road of dissecting his directing. I thought it's a nice show. If you've never seen Star Is Born, sure, go see this one. Sure as hell don't go see 76. But at the same time, I do not need to be around when the next one comes out. I'm good. I've seen it.
Yeah. I will probably, if it's the next generation's Judy Barber or Gaga, I'll probably go see it just to go see it. And I'm glad I saw this one, because if I hadn't seen it, I'd be really curious about it and I'd want to go see it. By the way, shout out to Ron Rifkin at Rehab, because I thought, great actor, very underused.
Oh my God.
Really
Yeah,
good.
he was cute. It was nice to see him. Okay, so that's A Star Is Born. And, again, as I said, my final diagnosis is that I would like to be long from this world when the next version is made. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah. So
yeah,
I mean, it's a melodrama. If you like them, go for it. Great, awesome. Yeah. Of the versions, if I had to rate them, I probably would do in order 1, 4, 2, 3.
Huh. I might do 2, 4, 1, 3.
Okay. So that's where I am. That Star Is Born. And do I think this is the movie that's out right now is worth it? Sure, matinee, it's worth it.
Oh, if you're a Gaga fan, I would say go have a great time.
If not, wait for Netflix. It'll be on Netflix and Amazon.
Yeah. And, if you think Bradley Cooper's nice to look at, he's very nice to look at.
But he's grungy in this, and he has greasy hair most of the time. And he's talking all gravelly like Sam Elliott, but it's like a poor man Sam Elliott. So, I mean,
he could get it. He could get it.
There are other movies to watch him where he's really, really hot, like The Hangover or something like that. I'm just saying.
He could get it.
Okay.
This is Popperation. I'm Eric.
I'm Stacey.
A podcast is born.
I am Stacey Main.
No, you're not.
You've been listening to Popperation with Eric and Stacey, the podcast that dissects popular culture one bloody organ at a time. Subscribe today on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other podcast listening site or app. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Popperation Room. Check out our website at popperationroom.com for all of the podcasts, our blog, swag, and games. Until next time, when we're back in the scrubs.
It's adorable, but it's almost 100 years old.